My golden child brother bragged about inheriting the family house while I got nothing, until the property taxes came due and he begged me for help. Growing up, Dominic was the prince of our family. Perfect grades, star athlete, dad's business successor. I was the backup plan, the one who went to community college while Dominic got a private university education. When our parents updated their will at 50, they made sure everyone knew. The house, the investments, the vacation property, all Dominic's. I'd get some furniture and mom's jewelry collection, maybe. It makes sense, Dad explained at dinner while Dominic smirked. He's building a family. You're still figuring things out. I was 28, working as a data analyst, and had just bought my own condo. But sure, still figuring things out. When Dad died suddenly 2 years later, the funeral felt like Dominic's coronation. He gave the eulogy, accepted condolences, and casually mentioned he'd be keeping the house. Mom moved to Arizona with her sister, and I helped her pack. Dominic showed up once, took some tools from the garage, and left. 6 months later, my phone rang at midnight. I need your help, Dominic said. No greeting. His voice sounded strained. With what? The property taxes are due. I'm a little short. I sat up in bed. How short? $38,000. I laughed. Actually laughed. That's not a little short. The house is worth over $1 million. I just need a bridge loan until I can refinance. So get a loan from a bank. Silence. Then, my credit's not great right now. The business had some setbacks. Dad's business. The one Dominic was supposed to be a natural at running. Not my problem, I said. They'll seize the house. Mom's house. Dad's legacy. Your house, I corrected. That's what the will said, right? Your inheritance, your responsibility. He tried everything. Guilt about family, promises to pay me back with interest, reminders of childhood memories in that house. I let him spiral, then told him I'd think about it. The next morning, I did research. The house hadn't just been inherited. Dominic had taken out a massive home equity loan 6 months after Dad died. He'd blown through $400,000 on God knows what, and now couldn't cover basic expenses. When Mom called later that week, I knew he'd gotten to her first. Please help your brother, she begged. I can't lose that house. You don't live there anymore, and legally it's not yours to lose. But it's our family home that Dominic got, exclusively. Remember? I hung up and waited. 2 weeks before the tax deadline, Dominic showed up at my condo unannounced. His Mercedes was gone, replaced by a Honda. He looked thinner, older. I'll give you partial ownership, he said. 20% equity in exchange for the tax payment. I shook my head. Full ownership. Transfer the deed to me and I'll pay everything. Taxes, the equity loan, all of it. His face went red. That's insane. It's worth over $1 million. Then you'd better find another solution. He tried to argue, but I closed the door. The morning the taxes were due, my phone exploded with messages from relatives. How could I let them take the family home? Why was I being so cruel? At 4:47 p.m., Dominic sent a single text. Fine, your term. I paid the $38,000 in taxes that day. The deed transfer took 2 weeks. When it was final, I stood in the empty living room where Dominic had once celebrated his inheritance. The same room where Dad had explained why the golden child deserved everything. I listed the house that afternoon. 3 offers came in within days. But before I accepted any of them, I found something in Dad's old office. A lockbox I'd never seen before. Inside were documents that made my blood run cold. Bank statements showing Dad had given Dominic $250,000 in business loans that were never repaid, and a second will, dated 3 months before he died, that split everything equally between us. Dominic had known. The whole time, he'd known. I sat on Dad's old leather chair, the second will trembling in my hands. The date was clear. March 15th, 3 months before the stroke that killed him. It was notarized by Patricia Hoffman, Dad's longtime attorney, the same attorney who'd read us the official will that gave everything to Dominic. My phone was already in my hand before I'd fully processed what this meant. Patricia's secretary answered. Hoffman Legal. How may I direct your call? Patricia Hoffman. It's urgent. May I ask who's calling? Tell her it's about Richard Chen's estate. Tell her I found the March will. The line went quiet for exactly 4 seconds. Please hold. Patricia's voice came through, carefully neutral. Hello? I wasn't expecting to hear from you. I bet you weren't. I took a photo of the will with my phone. You want to explain why you read us a will from January when there's one from March that splits everything 50-50? Silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. I need to see that document in person, she finally said. I'm sure you do. How much did my brother pay you? That's a serious accusation. Then report me for slander. I'll see you in court with this will and let a judge decide who's making false accusations. I heard her exhale. Can you come to my office tomorrow at 9? I'll be there at 8:30. And Patricia? I'm bringing copies. Several of them. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking now, adrenaline replacing the initial shock. I photographed every page of the will, every bank statement, every loan document. I uploaded everything to 3 different cloud services and emailed copies to my personal attorney, Rebecca Torres. Rebecca called back within 20 minutes. Where did you find these? She asked without preamble. Dad's office, hidden lockbox. The signature and notarization look legitimate. If this is real, your brother committed fraud. And possibly the attorney too. It's real. I'm meeting with Patricia Hoffman tomorrow morning. Don't go alone. I'll be there. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept reading through the documents, piecing together what had happened. The second will was explicit. The house, the business, the investments, everything split equally. There was even a personal note in Dad's handwriting attached to the back. To my children, I've made mistakes in how I've treated you both. Dominic, I enabled your worst tendencies by always bailing you out. And sweetheart, I underestimated you at every turn. This is my attempt to make things right. You're both my legacy, and you both deserve equal shares of what I've built. If you're reading this, Patricia, you know what to do. Make sure they both get what's rightfully theirs. I read it 5 times, tears blurring the words. Dad had seen it. At the end, he'd finally seen how unfair he'd been, and someone had stolen that from both of us. At 8:30 the next morning, Rebecca and I walked into Patricia's office. The attorney looked like she'd aged 5 years overnight. Her normally perfect hair was slightly disheveled, and there were dark circles under her eyes. "Let me see the documents," she said immediately. Rebecca placed copies on her desk. Patricia examined them carefully, her face growing paler with each page. "These are authentic," she whispered finally. "This is Richard's signature, my notary stamp." "Then why did you read us a different will?" I asked. Patricia closed her eyes. "Because Dominic brought me the January will and told me Richard had changed his mind again. He said Richard thought you weren't ready for that kind of responsibility, that he'd asked Dominic to destroy the March will, but Dominic had kept it in case there were legal questions. And you believed him? Richard had changed his will 4 times in 6 years. He was always second-guessing himself, especially about the business. And Dominic was so convincing. He seemed genuinely worried about protecting you from the stress of managing everything. So you just ignored the later will?" "I looked for it in Richard's files. I couldn't find it. Dominic said Richard had likely destroyed it himself, and the January will was properly executed, so—" Rebecca leaned forward. "So you took the word of a beneficiary who stood to gain everything, rather than doing due diligence to locate a more recent will that he claimed existed?" Patricia's hands trembled. "I've been a probate attorney for 32 years. I never thought he'd lie to me like that. I'd known him since he was 16. That makes it worse, not better," I said. She nodded slowly. "I'll notify the court immediately. The estate will need to be reopened. You're entitled to half of everything, including what's already been distributed." "Not exactly," Rebecca interjected. "Given that my client now owns the house free and clear through a legitimate purchase from Dominic, and Dominic has already spent the other assets, this gets complicated." Patricia looked at me. "You own the house now?" I explained the property tax situation, the deed transfer, my payment of the equity loan. Patricia's expression shifted from shame to something harder to read. "Then Dominic sold you property that was only half his to sell. He sold you your own inheritance." "That's one way to look at it. There's no other way to look at it. You're owed approximately $650,000, half the value of the estate at the time of Richard's death, plus interest." She paused. "And I owe you a profound apology. I failed in my duty as your father's attorney. I'd prepared for this meeting expecting anger, confrontation, maybe legal threats. I hadn't expected Patricia to look so broken. What did Dominic do with the money?" I asked. Patricia opened a file on her computer, clicked through several documents. The liquid assets totaled $847,000 after taxes and fees. The vacation property sold for $385,000. Combined with the value of the business and other assets, the total estate was approximately $2.3 million. My stomach dropped. Half of that was over $1 million. Where did it go? She turned the screen toward me. Bank statements, credit card bills, investment records. Dominic had burned through money like he was trying to set a record. $180,000 on a boat he'd already sold at a loss. $95,000 in casino markers from Atlantic City. $220,000 in day trading losses. $120,000 on jewelry, including a $40,000 engagement ring for a woman named Valentina Russo. The list went on. Cars, trips, designer clothes, a timeshare in Cabo, cryptocurrency that tanked within weeks. "He spent it all," I said flatly. "Not quite. There's about $30,000 left in his personal account. And the business still exists, though it's hemorrhaging money." Rebecca was already typing notes. "We'll need full documentation of every transaction, and we're filing a claim against Dominic for fraud and against your firm for negligence." Patricia nodded. "I won't fight it. I'm also reporting myself to the state bar. What I did, there's no excuse. I should have felt vindicated, but mostly I just felt sick. My brother had stolen my inheritance and lit it on fire, and my father's attorney had helped him do it, however unintentionally. I need to make a call," I said, walking out to the hallway. I dialed Mom's number. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Honey, is everything okay? Did you know about the second will?" Silence. "Mom, did you know? Your father mentioned he was making changes. He said he wanted to be more fair to you. But after he died, Dominic said Dad had changed his mind again, that Dad felt you weren't ready yet. And you believed him. Dominic was handling everything. The funeral, the estate, the business. You were so quiet after Dad died, I thought maybe you didn't want the responsibility. I was grieving, Mom, and I was hurt that Dad had left me nothing. But you seemed fine. You bought your condo, you got that promotion. Because I had to be fine. Because no one was going to hand me anything." I heard her crying softly. "What's happened?" I told her everything. The second will, the hidden documents, Patricia's confession, the money Dominic had blown through. When I finished, she was silent for a long time. "My boy wouldn't do that," she finally whispered. "Your boy absolutely did that. But he's been under so much stress with the business. Mom, stop, just stop. He committed fraud. He stole from both of us. Half of that estate was mine, and he knew it. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to sue him for every penny. And if he can't pay, I'll take the business, whatever's left in his accounts, and whatever else I can legally claim. Please don't do this. He's your brother. We're family. Dad tried to make things right. Dominic made sure that didn't happen. That's not family. That's theft." I hung up before she could say anything else. Rebecca found me in the hallway. "Patricia's preparing a formal statement. She's also transferring all of Richard's files to us. But we have a problem." "What?" "Dominic's cleaned out his bank accounts. The $30,000 is gone. He transferred it this morning." "Of course he did. He'd probably been monitoring his accounts, seen the house was officially mine, and panicked. Where did it go?" "She's trying to trace it, but it looks like he moved it offshore. Cayman Islands, maybe." I laughed, a bitter sound that surprised both of us. "He's running. Looks like it." Rebecca checked her phone. "I've got a colleague who specializes in asset recovery. Let me make some calls." Back at my condo, I opened my laptop and did something I should have done weeks ago. I searched for Valentina Russo, the woman Dominic had bought the $40,000 ring for. Her Instagram was public, model gorgeous, with the kind of lifestyle that screamed sugar daddy. Except her recent posts told a different story. Pictures of her with Dominic had been deleted. Her bio now said, entrepreneur and life coach. I sent her a DM. Hi, Valentina. This is Dominic Chen's sister. I'm trying to locate him regarding some legal matters. If you have any information about where he might be, I'd appreciate you reaching out. I didn't expect a response. But 20 minutes later, my phone pinged. He's a liar and a thief. Check the Monarch Hotel in Costa Rica. He mentioned having a place there. Hope you take him for everything. Attached was a screenshot of texts between them. Dominic promising her the world, then ghosting when the money ran out. She'd been smart enough to keep the ring, though. Rebecca was thrilled when I forwarded her the information. Costa Rica doesn't have an extradition treaty for civil matters, but he can't hide forever. Eventually, he'll have to come back. What if he doesn't? Then we seize everything he left behind. The business, any remaining assets, we'll put liens on anything in his name, and we'll make sure every credit agency knows he's dodging a legal judgment. Over the next 3 weeks, Rebecca's team worked like a military operation. They filed motions to reopen the estate, sued Dominic for fraud, and submitted formal complaints against Patricia's firm. Patricia cooperated completely, providing documentation of every communication with Dominic, every transaction, every decision made regarding the estate. The court agreed to reopen the case. A judge reviewed the 2 wills and Dad's note. She looked at me over her reading glasses. Ms. Chen, I'm sorry this happened to you. Your father's intent was clear. The March will supersedes the January will. You're entitled to 50% of your father's estate as of the date of his death. Your Honor, Rebecca said, given that the majority of the estate has been dissipated through fraud, we're requesting the court grant my client ownership of the business and any remaining assets in Dominic Chen's name. The judge nodded. I'm granting a judgment of $1,150,000 against Dominic Chen, representing the plaintiff's rightful inheritance plus interest. Until this judgment is satisfied, all assets in his name are frozen and subject to seizure. I walked out of that courtroom in a daze. Rebecca was grinning. We did it. Everything he has left is yours. Dad's business turned out to be worth saving barely. Dominic had run it into the ground, but the core was solid. I hired a management consultant and spent 3 months learning everything about commercial real estate development. It wasn't the career I'd planned, but I was good at it. Analyzing data, spotting patterns, predicting outcomes. Turned out my skills transferred perfectly. Within a year, the business was profitable again. I'd cleaned house, fired Dominic's incompetent cronies, and brought in people who actually knew what they were doing. We landed 3 major contracts in 6 months. The business that was worth maybe $200,000 when I took over was now valued at $1.8 million. Mom called occasionally. At first, she begged me to drop the lawsuit. Then she tried guilt. When those didn't work, she just stopped mentioning Dominic altogether. We talked about weather and her garden, and nothing important. Your brother's been through a lot, she said once. So have I. But you came out on top. Can't you just let it go? He stole from me, Mom. He committed fraud. He destroyed Dad's final wish to make things right between us. He's your only brother. And I was his only sister. That didn't stop him. Dominic stayed in Costa Rica for 18 months. I know because I hired a private investigator who sent me monthly updates. He'd rented a beachfront apartment, was bartending at a tourist resort, and by all accounts was living a modest life. The money was gone and he couldn't access anything back in the States without triggering the court order. Then one day, my PI sent an interesting email. Dominic's girlfriend was pregnant. The woman he'd moved in with, a Costa Rican local named Camilla, was 5 months along. My investigator had talked to some expats who knew them. Dominic was apparently terrified about becoming a father without any financial security. 3 weeks later, I got a call from an unknown number. Don't hang up, Dominic's voice. I almost did anyway. Instead, I put the phone on speaker and hit record. What do you want? I need to come home. Camilla's pregnant. She needs proper medical care. I need to find real work. Good luck with that. Please, I'm asking you. I know I messed up. You didn't mess up. You committed fraud. You stole my inheritance and tried to erase our father's final wishes. I panicked, okay? When Dad died, I was drowning in debt. The business was failing. I thought if I could just have a little time to fix things. You had $1 million. You could have fixed everything and still had money left over. I made bad investments. You bought a boat and gambled and traded crypto like a teenager. Don't act like you were trying to save the business. He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller. What do I have to do? Come home. Face the judgment. Give a deposition explaining exactly what you did and why. Testify against Patricia's firm if it goes to trial. And never, ever contact Mom and try to paint me as the villain. What happens then? Then maybe we can work out a payment plan. Maybe I'll let you work at the business you almost destroyed at an entry-level position and you can slowly earn back some dignity. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You want to come home? You want to be there for your kid? Then you face what you did, all of it, publicly. He hung up. I didn't expect to hear from him again. But 2 days later, an email arrived from an attorney in San Jose. Dominic was willing to return to the United States and cooperate fully with all legal proceedings in exchange for a payment plan for the judgment and potential future employment. Rebecca reviewed the proposal. He's desperate. We can push for better terms. No, let's take it. I want this over. Dominic flew back 3 weeks later. I didn't go to the airport. I didn't see him until his deposition, where he sat across a conference table looking 10 years older. His lawyer read a prepared statement, and then Dominic answered questions for 4 hours. Yes, he'd found the second will. Yes, he'd hidden it deliberately. Yes, he'd lied to Patricia about Dad changing his mind. Yes, he'd spent the money recklessly, assuming I'd never find out. When Rebecca asked why he'd done it, he stared at his hands. Because I'd always gotten everything. It never occurred to me that I shouldn't. After the deposition, I went to Dad's grave for the first time in 2 years. I'd avoided it. Angry at him for the way he'd treated me. Angry at him for dying before things could be different. I found your note, I said to the headstone. I know you tried to make it right. The wind picked up, rustling through the oak trees around the cemetery. I sat on the grass, not caring about the dirt on my pants. I'm running your business now. It's doing well. Better than it ever did with Dominic, actually. I think you'd be surprised. Or maybe not. Maybe you knew all along what I could do. I pulled out my phone and opened a photo of the note from Dad's will. I'd read it so many times I had it memorized, but I needed to see his handwriting again. I forgive you, I said. I forgive you for not seeing me clearly until the end. At least you tried to fix it. That's more than Dominic ever did. 3 months later, Dominic started working at the business. I put him in the lowest position we had. Data entry, filing, basic administrative work. He worked in a cubicle on the 3rd floor, nowhere near my office. I saw him once a week when I reviewed department reports, and we never spoke beyond what was necessary. His paychecks were garnished per court order. 70% went toward the judgment. He lived in a studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood and took the bus to work. Camilla had stayed in Costa Rica with the baby, a girl they'd named Isabel. He video called them every night. I knew because I'd see him in his cubicle during late evenings, speaking soft Spanish to the screen, his face transformed by love for a daughter he couldn't afford to bring home yet. One evening, I was working late when I heard someone in the break room. Dominic stood by the coffee maker, staring at a photo on his phone. He didn't notice me at first. "She's beautiful," I said. He jumped, nearly dropping his phone. When he saw it was me, his whole body tensed. "Sorry, I'll get back to work. It's 7:30. You're off the clock." He hesitated, then showed me the photo. A tiny baby with dark hair and Dominic's eyes, wrapped in a pink blanket. Isabel. She's 4 months old. I looked at the photo. At my niece I'd never met. "When's the last time you saw her?" "Not since I came back. I can't afford the flight. And even if I could, I can't take time off work." Something in his voice cracked. This wasn't the arrogant golden child I'd grown up with. This was a man who'd lost everything and was slowly understanding what that meant. "You know," I said carefully, "the company has a policy for family leave. If you filled out the paperwork, you could take a week to visit." I saw that. "But the leave is unpaid. And the garnishment is court-ordered. But I'm the one who sets your salary. And I just decided you're due for a bonus. $5,000 for completing your probationary period." He stared at me. "Why would you do that?" "Because Isabel deserves to know her father. And Camilla deserves to have you there, even if it's just for a week." "I don't understand. After everything I did, you're paying for what you did. You'll be paying for years. But that baby didn't do anything wrong, and I'm not going to punish her because her father's an idiot." Dominic's eyes filled with tears. He set down his coffee cup with shaking hands. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry for all of it. I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I need you to know that I see it now. What Dad was trying to do, what I took from you, and from him, his last chance to make things right, and He couldn't finish. He just stood there, crying silently in the break room of the company he'd once expected to rule. I handed him a tissue. "Book the flight, take your week, bring me back pictures of Isabel." He nodded, wiping his eyes. "Thank you." I left him there and went back to my office. Through the window, I could see the city lights spreading out below. Dad's city, the one he'd built his business in, the one I was building mine in now. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Your brother told me what you did. Thank you for being the bigger person." I didn't respond. Being the bigger person implied this was about ego or pride. It wasn't. It was about a baby who needed her father, and a man who needed to understand that mercy wasn't the same as absolution. Dominic went to Costa Rica the next week. He sent me exactly 3 photos. Isabel asleep on his chest, Isabel holding his finger, and one of Camilla and Isabel together, both smiling at the camera. When he came back, something had shifted. He worked harder, stayed later, volunteered for projects no one else wanted. During a staff meeting 6 months later, he presented an analysis of our bid process that was genuinely innovative. I approved it, and his strategy landed us a contract worth $2.4 million. "Good work," I told him afterward. "I'm trying to earn my way back," he said. "Not to where I was. I know that's gone. Just to being someone you don't regret giving a chance. Keep doing work like that and we won't have any regrets." 2 years into his payment plan, I did something I hadn't planned. I restructured his debt. Instead of the impossible sum that would take him decades to repay, I accepted the business's growth as partial payment. He'd been instrumental in 3 major deals. The company was worth 4 times what it had been when I took over. I calculated his contribution and reduced his debt by $400,000. When Rebecca called to confirm the restructure, she asked if I was sure. "He's earning it," I said. "Not with money, but with work. Real work. You're more forgiving than I'd be." "I'm not forgiving. I'm being practical. A desperate employee is a liability. One who sees a path forward is an asset." But that wasn't entirely true. Part of me wanted to see if Dominic could become someone worth forgiving. If the brother who'd stolen from me could transform into someone who'd earned redemption. 3 years in, Camilla and Isabel moved to the States. I met them at a coffee shop Dominic had picked, somewhere neutral. Isabel was 3 by then, bilingual, with Dominic's smile and Camilla's fierce intelligence. "Thank you," Camilla said, holding Isabel's hand, "for giving him the chance to be better. He's earning it himself, but you gave him the opportunity. That's not nothing." Isabel climbed into Dominic's lap and showed me a drawing she'd made. Stick figures with a house, a sun, butterflies. "That's you," she said, pointing to one of the figures. "Papa says you saved him." I looked at Dominic. He had the decency to look embarrassed. "Your papa is being dramatic. I just gave him a job." "No," Dominic said quietly. "She's right. You saved me from who I was becoming. 5 years after Dad died, I stood in the house I'd fought for and won. The house I'd saved from foreclosure, purchased through Dominic's desperation, and now fully owned. It had been empty since I'd taken possession. Too big for just me, too full of memories I wasn't ready to face. But now, I was ready. I hired contractors to renovate. They tore out the formal dining room where Dad had announced Dominic's inheritance, replaced it with an open-concept kitchen. The living room where I'd confronted Dominic became a library. Dad's office, where I'd found the hidden will, became a music room. I kept one thing original, the back porch where Dad used to drink his coffee in the mornings. That stayed exactly as it was. Mom flew in for the renovation reveal. She walked through slowly, touching the new walls, the updated fixtures, the spaces that were familiar but transformed. "It's beautiful," she said finally, "but it's not the house I remember." "Good," That house had too many ghosts. She nodded, understanding. We sat on the back porch with coffee, watching the sun set over the garden I'd hired landscapers to restore. Dominic's doing well, she said. Camilla sent me photos of Isabel's birthday party. I saw them. She looks happy. He talks about you a lot, about how patient you've been with him. I haven't been patient. I've been holding him accountable. That's a kind of patience too. I considered that. Maybe she was right. Maybe the real test wasn't whether I could punish Dominic, but whether I could watch him rebuild and not sabotage it out of spite. Dad would be proud of you, Mom said softly, of what you've done with the business, with the house, with your brother. I'm not doing it for Dad's approval. I know. That's why he'd be proud. We sat in comfortable silence. For the first time in years, it felt like we were actually family. 6 years after inheriting nothing, I sat in the boardroom of Chen Development, the name I'd changed it to, and reviewed our annual report. Revenue was up 40%. We'd completed 12 major projects. Employee retention was the highest in the industry, and Dominic had just been promoted to junior project manager. He stood in my office doorway, holding the promotion letter I'd signed that morning. I don't know what to say. Try thank you and get back to work. He smiled, but didn't leave. I need to tell you something. I'm paying off the last of the judgment next month. 72 months, every payment on time. I know. Accounting keeps me informed. After that, I'm free. Legally, I mean. The debt's cleared. Congratulations. But I was thinking, I know you restructured the debt years ago. You didn't have to do that. And there's money you're still owed. The full amount of your inheritance, not just what the court ordered. Dominic, let me finish. I want to set up a trust for Isabel. Money that I pay in monthly, like I did for the judgment. But this time, it goes to you. Not all at once, but over time. However long it takes to make it right. I studied him. The golden child was gone, replaced by this man who understood that some debts couldn't be paid with money alone, but that the attempt mattered. Keep half for Isabel's college fund. The other half can go into the trust. You're letting me keep half? Your daughter shouldn't pay for your mistakes. But yes, you're going to keep paying. Because it's not about the money anymore. It's about you remembering what you did and choosing to do better every single day. He nodded slowly. I can do that. After he left, I pulled out the note Dad had written. I'd had it framed, and it hung on my office wall where I could see it every day. You're both my legacy, and you both deserve equal shares of what I've built. Dad had been wrong about a lot of things, but he'd been right about that. We were both his legacy. And somehow, against all odds, we'd both become people worthy of it. 7 years after the property taxes came due, I hosted Thanksgiving at the house. My house. Mom flew in from Arizona. Dominic brought Camilla and Isabel, now 7 and obsessed with horses. Rebecca came with her wife and their twins. Patricia Hoffman sent a gift basket and a card apologizing again, even though she'd been apologizing annually since the case closed. The dining table I'd installed could seat 14. We filled every chair. Isabel sat next to me, asking questions about everything. Why was the turkey so big? Who made the cranberry sauce? Could she have pie before dinner? Maybe a small piece, I said, sneaking her a taste when Camilla wasn't looking. Isabel giggled conspiratorially. Then she looked up at me with those serious eyes kids get when they're about to say something important. Papa says you're the smartest person he knows. Your papa is a smart man. He says you saved our family. That's a big word for a 7-year-old. I'm almost 8, and I know what it means. It means you made things better when they were broken. Out of the mouths of children. I looked across the table at Dominic, who was deep in conversation with Mom about Isabel's school. He caught my eye and raised his glass slightly, a silent acknowledgement of everything that had brought us here. I raised mine back. After dinner, everyone gathered in the living room. Isabel convinced the adults to play charades, which devolved into chaos when Rebecca's twins decided to act out dragon by climbing on the furniture and roaring. I stepped out onto the back porch, needing a moment of quiet. The November air was crisp, and the sky was clear enough to see stars despite the city lights. Mind if I join you? Dominic stood in the doorway, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He offered me one. Remember when we were kids? He said. We'd sit out here with Dad on Saturday mornings. You'd sit with Dad. I'd sit over there. I pointed to the corner I'd always occupied. On the steps, where I wouldn't interrupt the golden boy's time with his father. I never knew you felt that way. Of course you didn't. You were too busy being perfect. He was quiet for a long moment. I wasn't perfect. I was terrified. Every achievement Dad celebrated was another impossible standard to maintain. Every time he praised me, I felt the weight of his expectations crushing me. I spent my whole life trying to be what he wanted, and I still failed him. You failed yourself more than you failed him. I know. Took me years to see it, but I know now. He sipped his coffee. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you really let me come back? Not the PR answer you gave in court. The real reason. I thought about it. The real answer was complicated, layered with hurt and hope, and the exhausting work of deciding what kind of person I wanted to be. Because Dad's note said we were both his legacy, and I realized that if I destroyed you completely, I'd be destroying part of what he was trying to build. Some broken version of our family where one of us had to lose for the other to win. But I did lose. I lost everything. And then you had a choice. Stay lost or do the work to become someone worth finding. You chose the work. That's why you're here. Through the window, we could see Isabel dancing with Mom, both of them laughing at some private joke. Camilla was taking pictures, capturing a moment of pure joy. She's the only thing I did right, Dominic said softly. The only decision I made that wasn't poisoned by ego or fear or Dad's expectations? Then maybe that's enough. Maybe one perfect thing can outweigh 1,000 mistakes. You think so? I think it has to. Otherwise, none of us have a chance at redemption. We stood there together, watching our strange assembled family through the window. Not the family we'd been born into, with its hierarchies and favorites and unspoken resentments, but the family we'd chosen to build from the rubble of what came before. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I walked through the quiet house. Each room held new memories now, overlaying the old ones like a palimpsest. The shame and anger and betrayal were still there, but they were fading, becoming part of a larger story. In Dad's old office, my music room now, I sat at the piano I'd bought 6 months earlier. I'd been taking lessons, something I'd wanted to do since I was a child, but Dad had insisted was frivolous, not practical for a backup plan. I played a simple melody, nothing fancy, just notes filling the silence. My phone buzzed with a text from Dominic. "Thank you for tonight, for everything. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful anyway." I typed back, "Stop thanking me. Just keep being better than you were yesterday." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, every single day, I promise. I set the phone down and returned to the piano. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, the house I'd fought for stood solid and warm around me. Dad's legacy transformed into something that was fully mine. And maybe, just maybe, something we could share after all. 8 years after Dad died, Chen Development completed its biggest project yet, a mixed-use complex that combined affordable housing with commercial spaces. We'd fought the city council for 2 years to get the permits, and Dominic had managed the entire construction phase. At the opening ceremony, the mayor cut the ribbon while photographers swarmed. Dominic gave a speech about community impact and sustainable development. He'd become a good public speaker, confident without the arrogance he'd once worn like armor. Afterward, a reporter approached me. "Ms. Chen, there are rumors that you and your brother had a difficult relationship after your father's passing. Care to comment?" I looked at Dominic, who'd frozen mid-conversation, waiting to see how I'd respond. "My brother and I had to learn how to be family," I said carefully. "That process wasn't easy, but what's worth having ever is." The reporter pressed. "There were legal proceedings regarding your father's estate?" "There were. They're resolved, and they're private family matters. But surely, what matters is what we built from what we inherited. Not just property or money, but the values our father instilled in us. Look at this building behind us. That's our father's legacy, both of ours." That night, the news ran a puff piece about the Chen siblings revitalizing downtown with their father's vision. They got most of it wrong, but the photos of Dominic and me standing together, looking like we actually liked each other, went viral in local real estate circles. Mom called the next morning. "I saw the news," she said. "You looked like a real family up there." "We are a real family. Just took us a while to figure out what that meant. Your father would have loved that building." "Yeah, he would have. I'm proud of you both, not for the building, for finding your way back to each other." After we hung up, I pulled up the photos from the ceremony on my phone. There was one particular shot I kept coming back to. Dominic and I standing in front of the building, Isabel between us, all 3 of us smiling. Not a golden child and a forgotten daughter. Just people who'd learned that family was something you built, not something you were owed. Rebecca called that afternoon with news. Patricia's case just settled. The state bar gave her a reprimand and a fine, but she keeps her license. Good. Good? She helped Dominic steal your inheritance. She made a mistake, a huge one, but she cooperated fully once she knew the truth. She spent years trying to make it right. You've gotten soft. No, I've just learned the difference between justice and vengeance. Justice is getting what I'm owed. Vengeance would be destroying everyone who played a part in taking it from me. And which one did you choose? Both. Then neither. Then something in between. Rebecca laughed. You've become philosophical in your old age. I'm 37, ancient in legal years, especially for someone who's built what you've built. 10 years after Dad died, Isabel turned 10. She'd grown into a brilliant, confident kid who played violin and wanted to be an architect. She designed elaborate buildings in her sketchbook, showing them to anyone who'd look. At her birthday party, she showed me her latest design. "It's a community center," she explained, "with spaces for kids who don't have anywhere else to go, and gardens on the roof, and solar panels so it doesn't cost too much to run. This is incredible, Isabel. Papa says you could probably build it, if you wanted to." I looked at Dominic, who shrugged. I told her to dream big. Apparently, she dreams very big. "Tell you what," I said to Isabel. "You keep developing this design, take classes, learn the principles, make it perfect. And when you're ready, we'll build it together." Her eyes went wide. "Really? Really? But you have to do the work. I don't build anything that isn't excellent." "I can be excellent," she said, with the absolute certainty of a 10-year-old who'd never faced real obstacles. "I know you can. You're a Chen." Dominic looked at me, surprised. It was the first time I'd claimed him as family, not just through blood, but through choice. That night, as the party wound down, I found myself back on the porch with Dominic. Our ritual now, the 2 of us, coffee cups, watching the stars. "She's going to be better than both of us," he said. "Definitely better than you. Maybe as good as me." He laughed. "There's the sister I remember. The one who always had to prove herself. The one who never needed to prove anything because she was already impressive as hell. I just couldn't see it through my own ego." Past tense? Still working on it? But yeah, mostly past tense. A comfortable silence settled between us. After a while, he spoke again. "I paid off the trust last month. The extra payments? Beyond what the court ordered. It took 8 years, but it's done. I know. My accountant told me. All told, you got back about 90% of what you were owed. I'm sorry it couldn't be everything. Dominic, look around." I gestured at the house, at the family inside, at the life I'd built. I got everything that mattered. Still, I want you to know I'd give anything to go back and make different choices. I know, but if you had, we wouldn't be here. Isabel wouldn't exist. The business would have failed under your original management. Mom would still be caught between us, feeling like she had to choose. Sometimes the worst thing that happened to us becomes the foundation for the best things we build. He considered that. You're saying I had to destroy everything for us to rebuild it better? No, I'm saying destruction happened, and we chose to build something better. That's not the same thing as it being necessary. Don't romanticize your mistakes. There's that sharp edge I've missed. Never went anywhere. Just learned when to use it. Through the window, Isabel was showing Mom her community center design. Mom was nodding seriously, pointing to parts of the drawing, suggesting modifications. 3 generations of Chens, planning something together. Dad would be confused as hell by how this turned out, Dominic said. Probably. But he'd see Isabel and understand that the details of how we got here matter less than where we ended up, which is together. Messy and complicated and still figuring it out, but together. Dominic raised his coffee cup. To messy, complicated families who figure it out. I clinked my cup against his. To second chances and the people who earn them. To sisters who give them. We drank to that as the stars wheeled overhead and the city breathed around us. Inside, our family laughed at something Isabel said, and the sound carried through the open windows like a promise. This was Dad's legacy. Not the money he'd left or the business he'd built or even the house that had caused so much pain. His legacy was this. 2 children who'd learned the hard way how to be better than they were raised to be. Who'd taken his final attempt at fairness and transformed it into something he'd never imagined. Forgiveness without forgetting. Justice without vengeance. Family built not on what you were given, but on what you chose to create. And in the end, that was worth more than any inheritance. 12 years after Dad died, Chen Development completed Isabel's community center. She was 14 and had spent 2 years refining her design in collaboration with our architects. The mayor called it a triumph of vision and community partnership. I called it the culmination of everything we'd learned. At the dedication ceremony, I stood at the podium and looked out at the crowd. Mom in the front row, dabbing her eyes. Camilla holding her phone up, recording everything. Rebecca with her family, now including a 3rd child. Patricia in the back, still showing up to prove she'd changed. And Dominic next to Isabel, both of them bursting with pride. This building, I said, represents what happens when we choose to build instead of destroy. When we take our pain and transform it into purpose. My father taught me that everything has value, even if it's not immediately obvious. I spent years angry at him for not seeing my value. And then I realized he'd given me something more important than recognition. He'd given me the hunger to prove I was worth seeing. I paused, looking directly at Dominic. My brother taught me that people can change. That redemption isn't a single moment, but a daily choice. That family isn't about who hurt you, but about who does the work to heal that hurt. Isabel taught me that legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you empower others to build. The crowd applauded. Isabel hugged Dominic, then ran up to hug me too. For a moment, the 3 of us stood there together. 3 generations of painful lessons transformed into hope. Later, walking through the finished center with its gardens and solar panels and spaces designed for kids who needed somewhere safe, I felt something unfamiliar. Peace. Not the absence of pain, but its integration into something whole. Every stolen dollar, every moment of betrayal, every tear shed in anger or frustration, all of it had led here. To this place we'd built together. To this family we'd chosen. That night, in the house that had once been a battlefield and was now a home, I sat in Dad's old chair, my chair now, and wrote in the journal I'd kept since the day I found the second will. Dear Dad, you tried to make it right at the end. You tried to give us both what we deserved. Dominic stole that from me, and it took years to get it back. But here's what you didn't understand. The thing I needed to inherit wasn't money or property. It was the knowledge that I could fight for myself, that I could take what was stolen and build it into something no one could take away. You gave Dominic everything, and it destroyed him. You gave me nothing, and it made me unstoppable. So maybe you got it right after all. Just not the way you planned. The business you built is thriving. The house you loved is filled with laughter again. Your granddaughter is designing buildings that will outlast all of us. And your children, your complicated, damaged, determined children, have figured out how to be family, despite everything that tried to tear us apart. That's the real inheritance. Not what you left us, but what we built from the pieces. Thank you for trying to make it right. Thank you for failing in a way that forced me to save myself. I forgive you. I forgive Dominic. And finally, I forgive myself for all the years I spent believing I wasn't enough. I was always enough. I just needed the freedom to prove it. Love, your daughter. I closed the journal and looked around the room. At the walls I'd painted myself. At the furniture I'd chosen. At the piano where I played on Sunday mornings. At the life I'd built from rubble and determination. The golden child had gotten his inheritance and squandered it. The forgotten daughter had gotten nothing and built an empire. And somehow, impossibly, they'd both ended up exactly where they needed to be. The next morning, I arrived at the office to find Dominic waiting by my door. Isabel wants to intern here next summer, he said, learning the business from the ground up. She's 14. She's determined. Sound familiar? I smiled. She can shadow me 2 days a week. But she's filing, answering phones, getting coffee. No special treatment because she's family. She'd be insulted if you offered special treatment. Good. Then she really is a Chen. As I settled into my office, preparing for another day of building what Dad had started and I'd transformed, I thought about that moment in the courtroom years ago, when the judge had granted me 50% of Dad's estate. I'd thought that was justice, but I'd been wrong. Justice wasn't getting back what was stolen. Justice was becoming someone who couldn't be stolen from ever again. And that, more than any inheritance, was what Dad had actually left me. The capacity to save myself, the stubbornness to never give up, and the wisdom to know that sometimes the best revenge is building something beautiful from the ashes of someone else's betrayal. I opened my laptop and reviewed the day's agenda. 3 new project proposals, a meeting with city planners, a consultation with Isabel about her next design. The work never ended, but that was fine. I'd spent my whole life looking for my place. I'd found it by building it myself, and no one, not my brother, not my father's ghost, not anyone, could ever take that away from me. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Chen, your 9 o'clock is here. Send them in. I closed the journal, put Dad's note back in its frame on the wall, and turned to face whatever came next, ready for all of it.